Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Happy New Year. I am Gail Davis. This is Made in the Trade. And here is my BFF and my mentor as well, and my confidant, Courtney McLeod of Right Meets Left. We're going to talk all things finances and how to ensure that, you're working on your business and making sure that you're profitable. I think a lot of times when we start as interior designers, we're like, oh, branding, oh, logo, you're so fixated on everything else, right? And what you really need to do is make sure you have an accountant so you can make money. That should be your first hire.
It's so true. It's so true. Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Yeah, and this is a lesson I had to learn myself. I'm a career changer. I worked in finance for many years, and then I came into this and I was just so excited and just so joyful. And I was like, oh, I would do this for free if I could.
Basically, we were, in the beginning.
Pretty much. And, it took me a little while to wake up and realize, wait a second, no, if I'm going to have my own company doing this, then I need to commit to being a business owner first. Right. I'm a dedicated designer. I absolutely love that part of the business. But the most important thing is that I am the owner of this business. And so that takes it beyond being an interior designer, right. much farther beyond what you're doing, executing for your clients. It's really about focusing on creating a structure that works for you, creating strategies that put you onto the right path, and figuring out what you want that path to be. Not everyone's goals are the same. And your goals can also change and evolve over time. For many, many years, I struggled with, do I want to stay, a one person, firm, right. Like be small and just, try to get one or two projects that I can manage and make enough and, just do it that way. Or if I wanted to start to, expand beyond that and maybe build out a team and see what the path could take me. And it's really been about 3 years ago that I decided that I did want to have a small team and that I did want to grow beyond what I could do as one person. But by no means is either of those right. I think that you have to take a hard look inside and figure out, what is it that you really want to do with your time, because I spend a lot of time on the business. Yes. Versus design.
Can we talk about that for a second? What I love about you is that at any point in time, you know exactly where you are financially and how profitable you are being and where you're like, okay, I messed up here. I know you were in the finance world before this, and I know that has translated over to help you here. What made you do that? What prompted it? Because like you said in the beginning, you came and you're like, I'm a designer, let's do this. And something you said just quickly before we go on, you said business owner first, interior designer second. And a lot of people, you should write that down, people don't get that. So let's talk about it. What prompted you to get to where you are?
Yeah, like most things, I learned the hard way. The first couple years, I was working my butt off, and I would get to the end and, I'd, break even. I'd maybe make a little bit of money, and then I'd look back and I'd say, gosh darn, I worked so hard. What am I doing wrong? And then it was like, I sat down and I was like, okay, remember on that project when, the budget for the table was $2,000 and, I could either, pick a $1,200 table and get a nice markup, or I could pick that table I really loved that would be perfect that I could photograph. Yep. And it would be 1,900 and then I'd only get a little markup. I'm going to go for the 1,900 table. And when you make that decision over and over and over and over again, that's how you get to the end of the year and you're like, God, I worked so hard. What am I doing wrong?
Right.
That's it. It's no one big decision. It's literally those everyday little, I'll kind of shortchange myself here. oh, I'll cut the hours I'm billing there.
Mm.
In the moment, it feels so small. But every time you do it, you're reinforcing that as a habit. You're reinforcing that as part of the structure of your business,
100%.
whether
It's
you
a part of
realize
your
it or not.
process.
Whether
Right.
because the more you do it, the more instinctive it's going to be like, oh, well, that's, what I did before, so I'll just do that again. And it's like any habit, it's hard to break. But, for me, it was, those couple of times getting to the end of the year and looking back and just realizing this isn't sustainable. My joy for this business is going to go away. I'm going to lose my passion for something I've loved my entire life.
Mhm.
And, I looked around and I was like, this isn't the life that I want. I want to be making money. I want to live comfortably. I at least, I
Yes.
want at the end of the year to have enough money to have working capital for the next year, to be able to invest in my business.
Let's talk about that too.
Be able to hire PR, or to be able to hire a consultant, or to be able to hire a team. So, I think, particularly for solopreneurs, it's, big piece of advice I could give was fix those mistakes while you're a one person
Yes.
operation.
Yes.
Because anyone you hire, they're going to follow your lead. So if you're still a one person team, you are in that sweet spot, and it's the perfect time for you to really focus and change your own mindset. The other thing I think was really significant for me was, so many people focus on the top line, how much business am I bringing in, and they don't put enough focus on your expenses, your operating expenses. A lot of people don't even know what's their, average monthly operating expense. Like that should be like, poof, I know that number off the top of my head.
Right.
And over the years, you want to look at the trend of that. That's how you understand, what do you have the capacity for, right? It was saying, okay, this is what I'm making at the top, but these are my current expenses. Can I afford to bring on an additional expense each month? If I don't know where I am now, how do I know what I can add? Or how do I know where I need to subtract? That's really the power of information. And you don't have to be a numbers person for that. If you have your bookkeeper, that should be something that they're providing you anyway, or you can just ask them the question once a month, what were my operating expenses this month? And just, keep a note of that. And when you get to the end of the year, look back on it and say, okay, that number is a little high. Let me go back and see, how many subscriptions are, how, like,
Yes.
where is my money going? Because the $50
Yeah.
here, $100 there, 20, it adds up.
It does.
And so I've done that quite a few times where I'm like, why am I subscribed to this? Like, this is silly, and it's, little things monthly, but it adds up at the end of the year. So focusing on your expense side is something I think, it gets a shortchanged. And I think it's incredibly, incredibly important.
Can we also talk about the designers who say they're full line or they're full service? If you're in design, you're doing full service. Like I know people like, well, we're a full service team. You have to understand who you are wanting to come in as your client, correct? Because there's a client where you will make the money, and then there's the client that will be like, are you going to share your discount? They'll nickel and dime you all the way through. And you have to decide, is that the client for you? You have to set yourself up to win. And I think so many times that we set out ourselves up to fail. Like I said before, we don't hire a bookkeeper first. We're worried about the website or, logo. But you need to think bookkeeper, and you need to think, who is my target client? How did you narrow that down? And what were your learning lessons in getting there?
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, for me, it was a little different, because the number side came more naturally. So for me, a bookkeeper wasn't the first hire, but I think 9 times out of 10, I totally agree with you. Like having a bookkeeper will help you so much, but I think it's the bookkeeper plus having a really good project management system.
Yes.
Something like a studio designer, something like an Ivy,
Mhm.
Design Manager, whatever program works for you. Really becoming an expert in how to use that and how to run your business with that. I think that plus the bookkeeper is the key to, sort of the business financial side of having that, in control. I do think that for many years, I struggled with trying to provide full service to not full service clients. Talk about a recipe to make no money.
Yes.
And
talk about a recipe to be frustrated all the damn time.
Yes, yes. And I think it's an easy trap. It's a very easy trap. And some folks have figured out the formula to, work with clients, and make money at that side. I know, people have figured it out. For me, I made the decision that, that isn't where I personally want to be. I want to be able to be in a position where I can really do this full service, really full service. And that means, targeted towards certain clients. So that means the bulk of my business is more of these, full projects or clients really looking for more of a luxury experience. I do still like to take on, have it, one or maybe two smaller projects. Maybe it's, a friend of a client or, something like that, that's maybe a little bit smaller that can be really fun, but it's not the bulk of my time, nor is it the big driver of my business. The focus of my business is on that full service where I can really charge a hefty design fee and I can charge a markup and I have enough of a budget where I can still, get great things and get a great end result, but also make sure that I'm getting paid. It's a journey. It's been a journey for me to get there. There are steps to get there, but it's so worth it. When I look at our slate of clients today, versus 3 years ago, it's a completely different, universe. And I also look around and I'm like, gosh, right now, like all of our clients are lovely. I don't have any, knock on wood. We've got 10 projects going. We're starting 2 projects soon. And like 201, all of these people are really like the ideal client that I want to be working with. And there's a reason for that. It goes into all of the other things that we're doing, from how I'm marketing the company, the kind of work that I'm showing, the way that I'm running the business, that first initial call where I'm really, clear about how I work and this is, what we do. All of that is leading to the funnel into, those ideal clients. So wherever you are in the spectrum, if you don't have that client, understand that in this moment, you may not be able to give that quote unquote full service experience. And that's totally okay. That's totally okay. You'll get there. But right now, you need to tailor your service level to your business.
Yes.
Not the other way around. You got to understand, these are my expenses. This is how much money I want to make on top of that. So this is how much money I need to have to bring in. And then you need to work off of that. And that means you're not always going to be able to pick the perfect thing or get the perfect end result. But I'd rather have, a table I don't love as much, and at the end of the year have books that I really love. So that really, when you're in that decision, when you're in that moment, think to yourself, which do you prefer?
No, it's true. Let's just jump back for a second when you were saying about the $2,000 table. Do I get the one that's $1,200 and make a nice profit? Do I get the one that's $1,900 because that's the one I really love and just make a little bit of a profit? I think where we trip ourselves up is that we keep designing for us and our portfolio, as opposed to if the client tells you the budget, which I know is always a song and a dance in the beginning, and it's a game. If they tell you the budget, if you can really make it look pretty on a quarter of that budget or half of that budget, and just make it really an amazing project. So you're not, maybe doing all super high-end fabrics and furniture, and like, okay, here's just like Courtney and I, we will admit we have our low end, our middle, and our high end furniture people, our fabric people, the sources, everything, because you have to weigh it out and you have to ensure that you're being profitable. And can I just say, I just feel so sad when people are like, no, my client knows I get a markup, so I pass it on to them. And I was like, well, do you pass on your electric bill? Do you pass on your mortgage? Like, just, you're in business to make money. That's not a dirty word. And I don't know why it seems to be so much in this industry.
Yeah. That's a great topic. And for me, I actually don't have a problem being very transparent about my books with clients, their sort of project accounting, right. Because I'm very, very crystal clear how I'm charging. Like there are no secrets, there is nothing. So I'm not actively showing them those numbers, but they know that if they would like to know, it's available. I don't think I've ever even had a client ask just because there's a certain amount of trust that helps to build when you're like, yeah, you could see it if you want. There's not really any information there, but this is exactly how I'm charging. So,
it's in the contract. It's in
the contract. Exactly. You could, do the math backwards and get there. So, I know a lot of designers have been successful with sort of saying, I'm like Saks, I don't show you, and I personally didn't find success with that, but that's just my own personal experience. I think if you can make that work, awesome.
Yes.
One area of real wiggle room that we do give is custom. I am very clear that anything custom is on a case-by-case basis. So I'm not tying myself to any particular markup or anything on that. And so, as we've done more and more custom, that's been a place where, it's become a very profitable part of any project. There was a question about something that I said about sort of tailoring your service to your business.
Right.
And what I meant by that is, let's say you can only charge a $2,500 design fee. There's so much time built into that, right? So, maybe you can't spend, 20 hours on a fabulous presentation and have all these details and all of these CAD drawings and 3Ds and all of that stuff. Like, you can't provide that level of service. And so that's what I mean by, if I'm charging a certain amount, I have to understand what's realistic for me to be able to provide service level at that amount and to be really clear about it, right? Another lesson that I really learned is that clients are looking for you to lead.
Yes.
Right? This is a really opaque industry and they don't really understand what you do. They just have this kind of phantom idea, and then
HGTV.
Unfortunately they have HGTV.
Yeah.
And so you really, and I wasn't good at this early on. And I think, as I just got more confident about things, I got better at really very clearly articulating what it is I do, why is it a value add, this is all of the things you're getting for this number. You know what I mean? And I think, if you're good at articulating that, all that pushback people get on fees and stuff, it disappeared. And a big project we're working on in DC right now, when we're kind of working on the contract and everything, the client, she didn't quite understand the markup and sort of how that worked. And so I just, took some time and I was like, here's some simple numbers. This is how it kind of works. This would make sense. And I just did it in a lot of detail, and like, this is the logic behind it. And she was like,
Right.
okay, great, signed, here's the check.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a combo of being really, clear about what you can do with what you're charging, to set expectations. Because if you're going in and like, oh, we can do Architectural Digest work and it's, $99.99.
Right.
You're setting yourself up for failure. And that was really challenging, with the smaller design fees. It was, how do I, control the amount of service, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, it's so personal, and design is creativity. And you want to be able to have the time to find that perfect thing, to explore different ideas. But if you're on a tight budget, the reality is you can't do that.
Right.
You can't. Like, you
Right.
have to be really kind of streamlined, and you have to say, okay, this is, I did my furniture plan. I need this size sofa at this price. I know these 3 vendors do it. I'm just going to find something from one of these 3 vendors and keep it moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
You can't sit here and just like get your wheels spinning and going, but if I just show them this, they're really going to love this. They'll,
I do
and
that so much.
you may know the value of what it is, and you may understand like, oh, it's custom, it's beautiful, it's going to last, it's amazing. And oh my God, and this fabric on top of it. They don't care.
Yeah. I mean,
they don't get it.
Prime example right now, we're working on some, high-end projects, but then we're also working on a small project for a friend of a wonderful client. They don't have a huge budget. And so it's going to be like a West Elm, Crate and Barrel, that kind of thing. Totally fine. But I know going in, that this is I'm not going to have a lot coming into my company from this job. So the way I'm approaching that project is not the way I approach our, really full service higher end projects. Every step of the way, we have kind of like a 5-phase system. Every step of the way, I'm like, okay, I got to make sure, I'm not going too overboard. We can only spend X amount of time on the concept board. We can only spend X amount of time on the floor plan. We can only spend X amount of time, on the draft budget, to make sure, that we aren't letting it get out of control. And it's hard. It's hard to do that.
Yeah, because you know what it could be. You know exactly
I know what it could be, but I also, my expectations are set. I'm going to make it as cool and fun and creative and beautiful as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to be a project that I photograph? Maybe, probably not. And that's okay too. It's really, this is really lovely people, and I want to give them a lovely home. They understand the level of service that I can give. We're all on the same page. And it's really incumbent on me to control how I am allocating my time. I think we sometimes get in our heads like we aren't the ones driving this bus.
Yeah.
Right? Like right. I'm the one making
Right.
these decisions. I am the one who sits down to do something and I say, okay, I'm going to spend an hour on it. 5 hours later, it's been really fun.
Yeah. Oh, it's been amazing.
But then, so you do have to take some responsibility for that, and again, it's like those everyday little decisions like that, when you get to the end of the year and you're like, oh crap, what happened? Yeah. That's what happened.
You have to be very diligent. Like, I'm only going to spend 30 minutes doing X. I'm only going to spend an hour, doing floor plans, whatever it is. I'm looking at the comments. Go ahead.
The key to that also is that you have to have good processes.
Yes.
Right?
No.
And that's well-defined. Like, how do you actually do those things within your business? Because if you don't know how you do those things within your business, and there's no way you can do it in a really streamlined kind of fashion. For me, that just came over time of like refining and seeing what worked and what didn't. And now I have a super clearly articulated system, and of course we deviate here and there, but it's like at any point we know where we are on a project. And, I have someone, that I'm working with. She's been working with me for a couple months, and I sat down and I was like, this is the process. Here it is, post it somewhere. I want you to always be thinking about it. And as I'm working on tasks with her, I'm like, okay, we're in phase 1, we're doing X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. And so for this latest project, she was like, okay, so we're getting started. So I know we're doing X, Y, Z. And it was so great because she was
No,
like,
it's,
it's
yep,
very clear what the process is.
yeah,
So yeah,
yes.
so that's, sorry, a little tangent.
No, 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 you're right, because your processes are everything. And here's the other thing. If you have amazing processes, because we always talk about this and we bounce off of each other, when something goes wrong, you can pinpoint it exactly where it went wrong, what process you didn't pay attention to, and where you gave when you shouldn't have. Like, you don't go, if it's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you don't go step 1, okay, well, we're going to go to 5, let's get back to 2, because now it's creating confusion for you and for the client, and then you're looking like you don't know what you're doing in front of the client, and then now that's an opening for them to jump in and now to start driving when you should be driving and saying, okay, this is where we are, this is what we're doing. The more that you're in command of what you're doing, it helps you stay online to being profitable. I'm reading some of these comments. It says, what system do you recommend for one-person business?
Yeah, great question. You know what? My system, it hasn't changed that much. I purposefully tried to set up a system that I knew could work bigger than me, right? So the only thing that's changed is that I'm not doing everything in every step. So, I would say whether you're 1 person, 2, 3, that's less important than what does it mean? What is my design process? Like, how do I actually get from a signed contract to, a final
Yes.
You have a way of doing things right now. As a start, just jot down, like, what are you doing right now? Like, what are the steps that you're taking? You may not realize it, but you already have a system, and that could be part of the problem, right? Once you write it down and you're like, okay, wait a second, this kind of doesn't make sense, or this is inefficient. Why am I doing this? And then going back and doing that, it kind of doesn't make sense. So systems and processes, at least what worked for me was to set up something that worked with me as a person, with my analytical side, that just worked strategically for me as the owner. And then any employees, they come into my system, right? Because at the end of the day, the system is about what works best for me. Right. So if you're a solopreneur, that's what you're doing. You're creating a system that works best for you. And so I think that should be the focus. I hope that answers the question.
For me, I want to answer it, and there's something else in here. I'm trying to get in between the chat and the questions, so bear with me, people. I hired a business coach that I work with, and Courtney knows who she is, and I'll just keep that quiet for now. You could always DM me, and I'll talk about it later because I'm not here to promote her. But it helped me realize that, one, the reason why I hired her, because I wasn't being profitable. Like, I was just a little bit all over the place, and I had systems, but not really refined and defined, so I knew what I was doing. So I know that when I do a consultation now, a paid consultation, I walk with my contract, right? Because as I'm explaining to them, I tell them right there as we're doing the consultation, and they're asking me questions and like, how do you charge? Do you do flat fee? And I was like, no, I do hourly. And then I explain, listen, I'm going to charge you for everything. And I break it down how I charge and what I'm charging for. And they're like, oh, okay. I feel like if you're very upfront, it helps you. But then it also, that system also allowed me that by the time I walked out of their home or I left that appointment, the contract that I had, they signed it and it just translated to business. But you have to really be on point. You can't like not do something or do something and then not do it. Like, you can't be all over the place. Here's a question, Courtney, and then I'm jump over to the questions, people. It says, how have you built momentum in attracting your luxury full service clients, referral, social media, web, working with builders, others? I don't know, Liz, go ahead. You go first.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
Liz
yeah.
Goldberg. Hey, Liz.
Yeah, that's the trick, right?
Yeah.
There isn't one answer. So one thing I did that I got my first really big project was I am in New York, work in Manhattan. And so a friend of mine, they had their kids in a school, in, you know, kind of a nicer school. And, you know, at Christmas, they have like their Christmas auction. And I was like, well, let me give you a gift certificate, you know, for the auction. And, you know, I don't know, I think it was like maybe like 10 or 15 hour certificate or something. And so someone bought it. They had me come in and do a little nursery in their apartment in the city. Fast forward, not even a year later, they had moved to a big mansion in Long Island. And
Oh
they were
yeah,
like,
that's a beauty.
so that I've done that a couple times. So that's one that I really like doing. Number two, I found that between brokers and like contractors and architects, I actually think making relationships with contractors and architects is way more productive. You know, for a
Yes.
lot of time, I would have all these coffee meetings with brokers and try to get to know them and blah, blah, blah. And that's great. But when I look back and I'm like, where have jobs actually come from? It's from contractors that I've reached out to, either because I had a job or because I saw their work and I was like, hey, you know, I love your work. Let's, you know, meet and get together. If you do a job with a contractor and architect and it goes well, you know, make it clear that you know, you're here as a resource, you're a partner. I'm finishing up a job right now. We're not even finished. The contractor has already referred me to 3 other people the contractor is affiliated with the building, 3 other apartments in the building. So an architect that I partner with all the time, every time she gets a job that's sort of right for me, you know, she's like, I got the person. So that's a huge source. Another one for me, and this has been more lately, is the social media side, Instagram. I think that at first I wasn't really, a lot of people were like, oh, I get all my clients from Instagram. And I was like, what am I doing wrong?
True.
And I realized that it may not have been a direct funnel for clients, but it's such a great way to get my voice out there. And I think having a really well-defined voice on your social media, it's a way for people to get to know you. And it's a way to kind of get that funnel down to the clients that are actually your right clients.
Yes.
And, you know, I struggled with being really specific, you know, with my message, you know, because I was like, oh, I don't want to exclude, I want to be everything to everyone. No, as soon as I was like, listen, I'm like joyful, color, pattern, let's, you know, have fun with this. Those were the clients that I was getting. And that's, you know, where I want to be. So, you know, you may not be getting direct clients, you know, necessarily from like an Instagram, but I really, really think that's a good place to invest your time. I did try a print ad once. I've never done anything in the Hamptons. And so there was like a Hampton special issue. Yeah, that was money down the drain. You know, hey, might work for other folks, you know, I might try it again down the road, you know, who knows?
Don't forget show houses, our show houses.
Yeah, show houses. So I got into a show house loop and I did 4 show houses in 2 years. And I got 3 clients out of it, 4 clients. I think that's a little unusual, but that's a great way, you know, and again, also to get great portfolio pictures. Yes. That's the other thing, invest in good photography.
Yes.
That is like, whew, that is the number one thing. In fact, when I first started, like that was my very first step was, you know, decorating my apartment to the way that would show the right way and getting it professionally photographed. And that opened so many doors. So making sure you have really great photography. What else have we done? And then of course, client referrals. Yeah. You know, I think as you do this over time, that starts to become a bigger sort of piece of the pie. And so, you know, a lot of the jobs now are sort of, you know, through relationships. And another one that I have found has been interesting is vendor relationships. And I think this comes down to being personable, yes, you know, and having the right kind of energy.
Yep.
Because like if someone walks into their showroom and they're kind of lost and they're like, maybe, oh, I need some help or something. They're like, oh, I know who to send you to.
I've had it.
So we've gotten quite a few through, just really kind vendors. So it's not everything comes from one place.
No.
It's like, I hate to say it's a little spaghetti on the wall.
I'm just reading something. Someone said they never got a job from show houses. So I have to tell you my pet peeve with that. I do show houses. I got into the loop because of Courtney, and it just became an addiction.
Sorry.
But it's fun. It's fun.
It's so fun.
Yeah. Anybody that knows me and Courtney can attest to this. I don't pay for my show houses. Like, I get people to donate. So
Gail does it the right way.
So it always works out for me. So I always get asked by designers, all right, did you get any clients? Did you get any clients? You have to go, here's how you have to go into the show house. You have to go in designing exactly the way you want to if you had no clients. And it has to be really beautiful, really cohesive. It has to have a really good story. The scale has to be amazing. Like, it just has to be good. And it may not happen then. It may happen years down the road, or maybe a month or two later. There's always going to be someone looking. But this is your opportunity to show who you are. So you don't go in thinking, I'm going to get clients. And you just have to be mindful of that. The other thing that I want to talk about is that I've been to show houses, and I walk into some designer's room and I was like, wow, there was like, it's just like they just pulled out whatever from everywhere, threw it in there. And then you're wondering why. You have to, presentation is everything. If you want to make money, presentation is everything. And just really do that. And I also want to attest that I have been hooked up with an architect and a couple of contractors, but there's this one architect who only now seeks me. She had a couple of other designers, in queue, and then she was like, you're the one that always shows up, professional, ready to go. Your timeline is good. Like, your steps are perfect. Your processes are great. It works well for us. It works well for the client. So it has landed me a really wonderful job that's happening, which would have been tomorrow, but because of the state of emergency, it's in DC area. DC's on lockdown, so we're not going yet, but it worked out is what I'm trying to say. I have a question. Go ahead. No, go, Mama.
Yeah, just one quick comment on the show house. My first show house, I was very, very intentional about it. And I wasn't going into it to necessarily get clients. And I spent way too much money. I full disclosure.
But it's beautiful. It was beautiful.
Thank you. But the thing was, until that time, I didn't feel that I'd had the opportunity to really create something that was a pure expression of, my design vision, fully executed exactly how I would want it. And that was the goal of that project, to really just, what can I do creatively? Like, really push the envelope. And, I took the crappy space in the show house, which always ends up being the best space.
Yeah.
But it was, and it really stood out. And beautiful photography. Again, it got published, I think it was like 7 or 8 times in print. I don't know how many times online. Still, I get so many people are like, oh, I saw that, I want to work with you, or that sent me to your website, or, so it's an investment in time and money, but it's also like, be intentional, like have an idea of, why am I doing this? What do I want to get out of it? It can be about building vendor relationships too. That's a really, great perk of a show house. So just be intentional, because it's a lot of time. No lies.
No, it really is. It really is. And you have to go in like thinking like, I want to win this room. Like I want to really make this great.
I want to win this show house.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny. That's the other thing too. People go in going, oh, they want the biggest room. I was like, no, where's your tiniest room? I'm always looking for the smallest room. Courtney can attest to that. Where's your smallest room? They're like, really? I'm like, give me the smallest room. And then
she did the coolest laundry room I've ever seen, with the best idea I've ever seen. She had like a full bar in the laundry room, which I was like, that's genius. I'm totally feeling that. It was great.
We all need to drink in the laundry room. I'm going to read a couple of questions. It says, what about if you charge hourly and don't mark up? Are you saying you should still mark things up?
Oh, that's a great one. Oh
You like it.
gosh, boy. Okay, full
I'll let you go
disclosure
first.
again. At first, I did not believe in markups. I thought markups were BS. I was like, that doesn't make sense. Why am I charging a design fee and markups? Fast forward to, gosh, I'm just not making enough money. I can't be profitable like this. Which led me to realize markups are actually very critical and extremely value added.
Yeah. Yes.
So I actually had to convince myself why markups made sense. And this is not just my experience. I'm going to say this flat out. You cannot have a successful design business without a markup unless you are charging an absolute fortune for your design fee, period. And I would make the argument that an exorbitant design fee is a much harder sell than a design fee plus a markup. So if you're like, I'm going to charge a reasonable design fee and no markup, good luck. It's only going to get you so far. It's going to get you to frustration. And from experience, I'm telling you, if I could go back to the very beginning and change one thing, that would be the one thing I would change.
Okay, here's another one. Well, I guess you answered it, or yeah. What are your thoughts on charging a person a design fee versus billing hourly for your time? Is it based on each job?
Yeah, so again, I've tried everything, as probably you guys have too. Hourly is, for me, it was really hard. It would stress me out. I always found myself with hourly, I would, track all my hours. And I'd be like, oh my God, that's a lot of hours. Let me cut. Let me cut 30 hours off that bill or something. Yeah, I felt like it kind of put me down that road.
Right.
But the key to being able to start doing more of a fixed fee, or actually what I do now is a little bit of a hybrid, comes back to process, right? Because if you have a pretty well-defined process, then you kind of know, okay, it takes me about X hours to do this. It takes me about X hours to do that.
Right.
So that when you're figuring out a design fee, you can come up with a number and say, yeah, I'm probably going to hit that. That sounds good. And having your markup is that supplemental, the way I do it is I do, for the bigger projects, I do a fixed fee for phase 1, a fixed fee for phase 2, and then anything that's involved with installation, or execution, that side of it, like the logistics side, then that's an hourly, because I don't really know what that's going to be until we are, sort of further into the process. And that is logical to me. And I think when I explain that to clients, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I charge the design fee for design services, and I charge the markup. And part of this is what I don't do. I think there are some designers that do the markup plus an hourly for purchasing. And I actually don't do that. I just do the markup, and the markup is what covers part of the design. It sort of supplements the design, and then it covers our time for doing the actual order processing. Maybe it works for us because, again, a really well-defined process and a great project management tool, so that side of it, it's fairly straightforward. Of course, on the vendor side, they're so inefficient, there's always, stuff happening there. But, over time, you get to know the vendors that are easier to work with, and they get to know you. So your process gets a little more streamlined, because that is one thing I don't believe in the hourly purchasing plus the markup. I think we charge, our design fee, it's fairly, it's
Some
the
of us.
for the market, it's probably not that high. I'd say probably for the national, it would be high. But it's a fee that allows us to be full service. So yeah, so that's what I've been doing for probably the last 2 years has been the structure, and it's been working really, really well. It's the longest time that I've gone without making changes to
Okay.
how I do it. So I think I must be doing something right.
Yes. So 3 things. 2, I'm going to get to Patricia and Katie. You have great questions. I just want to say, here's another thing. Someone's asking about the show house, but just in general, instead of having like 100 vendors, you should really scale it down to those vendors, like Courtney was saying, that work really well with you. They really care
Gail
about your
is really
business.
good at that.
And like, they really want to, like, they're going to look out for you. When I have 5 solid vendors that I can call up, hey, Gail, what's going on? We talk about the family, how's everything going? And they're like, yeah, I have this client, and they send information, and they're like, they're going to call you, or else the client will call and be like, hey, so-and-so told me about you. And I was like, oh, great. It's better to have like a concentrated vendor list, vendor people that you deal with and your go-tos all the time, because then you also know what to expect when you're ordering from them, as opposed to like, a first time, or you only hit this person once a year and you only give them, say, I don't know, $10,000 in business, and they're looking at you like, oh, here she comes, whereas opposed to you do business with someone else all the time consistently, and they're gonna take care of you because essentially you take care of them. And
Yeah.
it's just always be nice. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say that's such an important topic. And really last year was when I started to really, we've talked about this, Gail, like really start to focus on that as like getting those key vendors, continuing to do that this year. Because the other thing is, the more business you give, the better pricing they'll give you.
Oh,
And
100%.
don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, it changes. It says, do you ever increase your design fee when the job keeps increasing in scope?
Oh, well, I'm very clear about the scope at the beginning.
Yes.
And I'm very, very clear that if we add things to the scope, that's going to be an additional fee.
Yes.
Again, it's on me.
Yes.
That's my
Yes.
responsibility to not let that
Yes.
happen. So in my contract, scope is well defined. We all understand. When they get the welcome packet, it's in there again,
Yeah.
So if there's an addition, no one's surprised. And I'm very clear about that. Scope creep used to happen to me all the time, but I had to just, again, get to the end of the year. This is another one of those little decisions.
Yeah.
That makes
Seriously.
a big impact.
No, right. They're like, seriously, Jessica, scope creep. Here's what you're thinking. You're thinking scope creep as a negative. It is your best friend.
Oh,
it is your best friend. You know why?
Totally.
Because you get to make more money. And
totally.
scope creep.
Totally.
When you complain about scope creep, I'm gonna keep it 100. That means you didn't do your job from the beginning, because you let them know at the very beginning, as you're shaking hands, you're stepping in, you're talking about the project, you're talking about everything you're gonna do. It's in your contract, it's in your welcome packet. You talk about it from the very beginning. Scope creep is your best friend, because that morphs that one room job into the whole house. Scope creep is your best friend. You need to make sure you pay attention to that. So
excellent.
Figure out how to talk about it from the beginning, have it in your contract, and be very specific in your contract, and be like, whatever you're working on, talk about that and say, if there's additional stuff, here's how much more it will cost you. You have to be super, super clear.
And it's a compliment. And I think for me, for a long time, I was afraid to have that conversation. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to upset them, or I don't want to, mess things up because, it's going really well. But the thing is, they wouldn't be asking you if they weren't really, really happy and really eager to keep working with you. So I don't be afraid to have that conversation, and just be very matter of fact. Oh yeah, of course. We'll have to figure out, pricing for that, and we'll come back to you, and then we can figure out, how to move forward. But super excited, it's gonna be great. Like, oh, I already have ideas. It's just a way to to communicate that. But again, it's self-preservation.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone just asked, what is scope creep? So if you go in and say, they're like, okay, we're going to do this one room. You're going to do the living room. Okay. So as you're doing the living room, they're like, well, can you come over here? I want to show you this, something in my dining room. Okay. Well, I want to show you something in my kitchen. That's scope creep. And when people are like, oh my God, I'm like, oh my God, let's go make money,
And that's a good point too. Sometimes scope creep isn't, oh, let's tack on my kitchen. Sometimes it's, oh, I just want to kind of look at a paint color here or something like that. That's super easy too. No problem, hourly.
Yep.
We'll be doing that hourly,
Yeah.
so it works either way.
Someone wrote, if you are doing a first time meeting with a client and you spend an hour to get a scope of the project, do you charge? I charge for consultations. I'm not coming out unless it's checked off on my calendar. I wake up in the morning with people setting up for consultations. Courtney, how do you feel? You're different. He's different.
I'm the opposite. So if it's a smaller project, I actually do a call and ask them to send me detailed pictures or video. And then I send a proposal. Again, if it's a small project. If it's a bigger, project, a significant project, I actually like to do it. I kind of look at it almost like a mutual job interview.
Sure.
I want them to spend a little time with me. I want to spend some time with them. I think it's very important. I think either way you do it is right.
Yeah.
I think that ultimately the cost of that is it's like factored into the level of design fee that we charge. I personally haven't found that leads the client to undervalue me or feel like my services aren't of value.
Right.
Because that walkthrough isn't about design. That walkthrough is show me the space, tell me your goals. I may throw out a general idea here and there, but it is not for me to walk through your house and give you like 50 great ideas.
100.
That's where people get messed up. If you're doing that, then you absolutely should be doing what Gail is doing and you should be charging. But I'm very clear about my site visit. It is not a design meeting. It's an interview. It's an interview. So that, again, this is what I've been doing for the last few years and it's been working for me. So yeah, but you have to find what works best for you.
Someone asked, what packages do we use as far as you use Ivy now, right?
Yeah. So I
use Studio Designer.
Gail knows the saga. So I've been a loyal Studio Designer client for years and years, and it was the key to my business growing. And you guys know they introduced 2.0 and it just hasn't worked.
It's good for me. It's worked out well for me.
Hasn't worked. I'm glad. It drove me to the point of like insanity. And so now we're in the process of transitioning to a new one, to Ivy, which I'm really liking so far. But boy, it is a beast doing that transition.
Yeah,
it really
it's a learning curve for all of them. I have to say, you had 2.0 before I did, because when they tried to bring me on board, it was a disaster. So they're like, no, they slammed me back to 1. And now they just brought me on to 2.0, like, I don't know, 2 months ago. And it's been absolutely amazing. Really great about it. People are asking what's in your welcome package.
Oh, sure. So my welcome packet, I have like a little cover letter sort of saying, oh, we're really excited. This is what's in the packet. And then the next thing is our client questionnaire, which asks them like all sorts of stuff. And included in the questionnaire, I asked the question at the very end, to you, what would a successful project or a successful design process be? And it's a great way for them to really articulate what they're looking for from me. Then I have a section where it's a repeat of what they've already seen in my letter agreement, in my contract, and it's a repeat of what I already have explained in our initial conversations, which is our process. And again, it's just re-articulating, this is everything that we're going to do, just another refresher. We're all on the same page. And then I've got my rules of the road, which just talks about, no late night texting, these are our office hours,
There's no texting with me. There's no texting.
and I touch on that, where we need to build trust, so there needs to be a bit of trust in the process, and I say that, we do things for a reason, and we have a process so that it allows us to enjoy the fun stuff. The process keeps us on track so that we can really just explore and enjoy. So again, it's a little bit of, the medicine and a little sugar, I'm always kind of a little medicine, a little sugar. And and so that's the welcome packet. And
yeah. So before we go, because we've got a couple of minutes left, Courtney, where can the lovely people find you?
Sure. Well, you can definitely find me on Instagram. I'm at Right Meets Left Interior Design. I'm also on Facebook for that. You can find me on the web. My website is www.rmlid.com. And if you go there, you'll track me down.
And you can find me at Gail Davis Design with an S on the end. Instagram, website, whatever. I see there's still a lot of questions blowing up in here. Just DM us. We'll answer. I just want to
shoot me. On Instagram, it's actually me. So shoot me a DM and it's easier to answer you that way. And yes, this will be available on recording. They normally put it up on YouTube, and it's under Made in the Trade, and just put in my name, it'll pop up. I just want to thank everyone for coming out. Courtney, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, because it's always a pleasure. Oh, anything for you, Gail. Anytime.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, gentlemen. Everyone have a great day. Happy New Year to all. Thank you so much. You guys are the best.